Hello everybody and welcome back, and in this video we will code our vulnerability scanner. So as I said, what we'll be doing is we'll actually perform the same port scanning while retrieving the banners from the open ports, and also after that we want to add a function which will check those banners with a text file that contains vulnerable software banners. So I made that file right here, so if you notice vulnerbanners.txt, if I nano it, what I have right here is a bunch of some gibberish right here, and then at the third position I have the banner from the SSH port from our Metasploitable, which is the one that we received in the previous video with our return banner program. Then after that I also have something which doesn't make any sense, just so we have multiple things in the file itself. So right now let us actually nano the file that we will create, or the program that we will create. Let's call it vulscan.py, and we will start off with the same line as in every program, so user bin python. And we need to actually import 3 libraries for this program. One of them is the regular socket library, which allows us to actually perform the connection and to receive the data from the target. The other one is the library that we will use in order to check whether the specified file of vulnerable banners exists or not, and whether we actually can execute it or read from it or not. We will use the OS library to do that. This OS library comes with some functions that allow us to check whether the file exists, so that's why we are using it. And the last library is the sys library, which we will use in order to check out the number of arguments specified in the command of the program. Since we will specify the command, or basically what I imagine this program to be, is something like this. So when you run it from your terminal, you will run it like this. So vulscan.py, and after that you want to specify vulnerability banners.txt. So we want the command of the program itself to be vulscan, and then the name of the file from which we want to read the vulnerable banners. So let me just delete this right now, and let's see how we can actually code that. First of all, what we want to do is actually code our main function, so def main, 2 dots, and the first thing we want to check out is to use the sys library in order to check whether we have the correct number of arguments specified in the command itself. So if you count the arguments, the first one is the name of the file, and the second one is the name of the file that we will use from the for the vulnerable banners. So there, at the total, there are 2 arguments, as I said, one the name of the program and one the name of the file. So we want to check if length of the number of arguments, so sysargv, equals to 2, which it should equal to 2. We want to have 2 arguments. We want to first of all set the file name, which is the file of our vulnerable banners, to be argument under the number 2. So sys.argv, and then at slot 1. Now you might be asking once again, why am I saying that it is an argument number 2 and then in the bracket specifying 1? Well, I will remind you that in Python counting actually starts from 0. So the first argument will be the argument or the name of our program itself, and it will be labeled as 0. Then the second argument will be the file name, and it will be named as 1. Right now, when we said that the file name is argument 2, we want to check whether that file even exists. So maybe the user specified the file name wrongly, and we want to check whether that file exists. So if we will use if not, os.path is a file, so is file, and we need to specify in the brackets file name, since that is the file that we are using. So this basically means if this file doesn't exist, or if this isn't a file, we want to print minus file doesn't exist. Oops, okay, so like this. Then we want to exit the program itself with 0. We also want to check whether the user has permissions to read from that file, so we can do that with this if not os.access. So if we do not have access to the file name, and then os.r_ok, we want to print access denied. Since, for example, maybe the user is trying to run this file as a simple user, and the text file that they want to read from is the root administrator or the root privilege file, and we cannot read from it, so we will just print access denied, and then we will also exit the program itself. So right now, since we checked 2 possible options, we want to add the else statement to the if statement. So we have the if statement, if the length of the arguments is equal to 2, which is correct, then we will check this and proceed to the next part of the code. But if it is not equal to 2, that means that the user specified a different number of arguments, whether that is too little arguments or too much arguments. So we want to print the usage so they know what they need to specify. So usage, whoops, and then we can do it something like this. Wait a second. So usage plus the string of the program name itself. So we can do that with the sys.argv, and then 0, since 0 is the first argument, which is the program name. And then we want to add a plus, so plus the vulnerable file name. So we can do it like this. What this will print is basically the usage and then the name of the program and then the name of the file, or basically this part right here, which will let user know that they need to specify a text file with the vulnerable softwares. So after we print the usage, we also want to exit the program. And in any other case, if actually they specified correct command, we want to continue executing the program. So let's see how we imagine this program to work. Well, first of all, what I will do is I will create a list of ports, the most used ports such as SSH port, FTP port, HTTP port, and so on. And we will actually scan multiple hosts and not just one host. So for example, in the previous videos, we were specifying the IP address of Metasploitable. And right now, let's specify for this program to actually scan the entire local host, local network. So how can we do that? Well, first of all, let us make a port list which will contain 22, 21, 22, 25, 80 for the HTTP, 110, 443. You can add as many ports as you like. I will just leave it on here. And right now we want to actually make a loop that will loop through all local machines on our local network. Now, since I don't really want to do all of them right now, I will just scan 2 or 3 machines. So we can do that with 4x in range. And that let's do from 4 to 6, since my IP address of the Windows 10 machine is ending with number 4. The IP address of my Metasploitable is ending with number 5, and that's why we are using from 4 to 6, so we can scan those 2 targets. If you wanted to, for example, scan the entire local network, you would just type from 1 to 255, since that is the maximal number of hosts available on a local network. But right now, we will just leave it on 6 and 4, since we are scanning only 2 hosts. And we want to set a variable that so our program can know what the IP address of those hosts are. So we use for x in range, and now we want to set the IP for each loop to be 192.168.1 dot. And then we close the double quotes and add the string of x. Now, why are we doing that? Well, basically, if you have an IP address that 192.168.1, we want to loop through this for each x from 1 to 255. So it will look something like this. Then this x right here will actually change value each loop. So we can scan different targets. So that's the idea. Now, after we did that, we want to actually loop through the ports themselves. So for port, in our port list, which is this right here, we want to actually run the same function as in the previous program, which is the return banner function. So let's just do that. So for port, in port list, banner will equal to return banner with the IP and port as the arguments for that function. And now we check if banner was received. So if banner was received from that certain port, we want to print print plus the IP plus the want to print the slash, so we can separate the slash and the port, the IP and the port. So we want to type the string from the port. So remember that you cannot print an integer, so that's why we use the string from the port number. And then we want to add the banner. Or first of all, we want to add the 2 dots, so we can separate the port and the banner themselves, and now we add the banner then. And right now, we also need to make a function that will actually check whether this banner is in the vulnerable banners in our txt file. So we will do that with function check once, which will take an input of the banner and the input of our file name. so the name of the file that we will specify in our command. And these two, which is the red banner and check once, we will code in the next video. So for now, we coded a good part of the code. We have our main function right here, which we should actually call down here. And in the next video, we will code the rest of these functions. So hope you enjoyed this video, and I hope I see you in the next one. Bye. Hello everybody, and welcome back to the second tutorial of our vulnerability scanner program. So right now, what we did by now, we coded the main function, and right now we are left to code the return banner function and the check once function. So first of all, we will code the return banner function, since that is something that we are familiar with. We used it in the previous video, so in the previous program. So let's just make it real fast. The function takes an input of the IP and also of the port. Then we put the two dots, and we will run the try and except rule to actually check whether we can connect to that port or not. So we will use the same as before. So socket sets default timeout to be around 2 seconds. And after that, we want to actually perform the as equals socket.socket, and without actually specifying any other arguments between the brackets. So right after that, we want to actually perform the connect function itself. So s.connect to the IP and to the port, so IP, port. And after that, we want to receive the banner with the banner equals s.receive 1024 bytes. So after that, all we want to do is just press return banner, and in the accept rule, we want to just return. So this is the function we already coded before. There is not too much to explain. It is same as before. So let us continue with our check vulnerabilities function. So def check once, which takes an input of banner and file name. So let me just check it right here. So banner and file name. Right after that, we will use something that we didn't use before, which is actually managing files in Python. In order to open a file in Python, you basically need a variable, which will be the file descriptor, and you need to just type open. In the brackets, you need to specify the file name, which in our case, it is just a variable file name. And after that, you need to specify the mode in which you want to open the file in. Now, there are 3 available modes. One of them is read, the other one is write, and the third one is append. So you can specify all of those 3 with a simple one letter, which is W for write, R for read, and A for the append. In our case, we only want to read from the file, since we want to read and compare the contents of the file with the contents of banner that we received from the scan. So we'll just specify double quotes, open and close, and then between them, the R for read. Then you close the brackets, and that is how you open a file in Python. Now we want to actually read from that file, but we want to read line by line, since we specified the vulnerability.txt file to actually have vulnerable software that are separated by each line. So let me just show you. If I just save this in a second, and here I have vulnerabilities.txt. If I nano the vulnerabilities.txt, here I have some gibberish, and in a third line I have the actual software that is running on Metasploitable 2 on port 22, so the SSH port. And we will then compare each line with the banner that we received from the open ports, and if they are equal, or basically if we find this to be in some kind of a banner, we will print that the software is actually invulnerable, and we will print it to the screen. So let us close this and nano back to our polscan.py. And now we want to use a loop which will basically say for line in file.readlines, open and close brackets. This is a function that we use to read line by line, and we will store each line in a variable that we named just line simply. We want to actually compare right now, so if line, and we want to strip out the new line characters, which is \n, and then between the double quotes, is in banner. So if this line dot strip the new line is in banner, we want to print server. So we will just type it right here. Server is vulnerable. Oops, is vulnerable. And then we want to print the actual vulnerable banner. So banner.strip, and then we will strip the new line so it doesn't present any problem to us. And basically, this should be the entire program. All we have to do right now is actually run the program on our targets and see if it will be able to find the SSH port as a vulnerable software running on our Metasploitable 2. So let us save this, Ctrl-O to save, enter, Ctrl-X to exit. We have our vulnerbanners.txt file containing the vulnerable banners. We have the vulscan.py, which is our program. Now let's actually try to run it. And it gives us the usage. Since we specified it wrongly, we need to specify the name of the file with the command. So we will specify it like this, vulscan.py, and then vulnbanners.txt. So right now, if I press here enter, it will perform the scanning of the localhost machines from 4 to 6, from the IP address ending with 4 to 6, and then hopefully it will find the Metasploitable SSH port as a vulnerable software running there. And as we can see, it has finished. It found the open ports, it found the versions of software running on those open ports, and it also found that the server is vulnerable with this software running. It scanned the Metasploitable on port 22, found the banner, and right after that it printed out that the server is vulnerable because this banner right here is also contained in this vulnerbanners file.txt. So, of course, with the real scans, you won't really be using a file like this. What you want to do is actually download from the internet a file that contains vulnerable software names, and then you can compare it like that with your scan. So that will be about it for this section. In the scanning section, we coded our simple port scanners, and then later on we coded the advanced port scanners. We also finished off with the program that returns the banner of those softwares running, and we finished off our scanning section with the vulnerability scanner on open ports. So hope you enjoyed this section, and hope I see you in the next lecture where we will continue coding. Have a nice day and take care. Bye. Hello everybody and welcome back, and in this section what we will do is we will look at some of the attacks that we can use on the ports that we actually got from our scanning section. So for example, we scanned our Metasploitable, we found out SSH was vulnerable, we found out open ports such as FTP open port on 21, we found out SSH open port on 22. Now let's see how we can actually do some of the attacks in order to compromise the target machine. So first of all, let's see how we can legit log into the SSH. So we know that the target, and by target I mean our Metasploitable machine, is running the SSH port open, so we can see that the IP address of our Metasploitable is 192.168.1.5. So let's actually try to SSH to 192.168.1.5. Oops, SSH, not SH8. So SSH 192.168.1.5. And here we can actually see some of the stuff that we get from the program itself. So this is everything that we need to take in matter once we actually start coding the our SSH brute forces, for example, or our program that will connect to the target and actually execute the cat@cshadow, for example, command, which is the command in order to see all of the saved passwords on the target Linux system. So let me just show you. First of all, the authenticity of host can be established, okay? The RSA key fingerprint, and this is the fingerprint of the target, and it asks us now, are you sure you want to continue connecting? So this is the question that can actually present us problem once we start coding, since we actually have to answer it before we start connecting and sending passwords and usernames and so on. So let's see what happens once we specify yes. It will say, warning, permanently added 192.168.1.5 RSA to the list of known hosts. Now I'll also show you how you can delete that afterwards, but right now let us see how we can log in to the Metasploitable over SSH. Now I believe in order to do that, the password is just msfadmin. Now you will notice that once you type right here, that will not be printed out. That is normal, just click enter after specifying the msfadmin, and permission denied. Not really sure why is the permission denied. It might not be msfadmin, so let's try it for. Okay, so in order, let me just find out what, first of all, the SSH password is for the Metasploit, then I will log in. Okay, so the problem was that I need to specify the account on which I'm logging on, so I want to log into the MSF admin account, so msfadmin at 192.168.1.5. Now it will ask for the password, which is msfadmin. And as you can see right now, we successfully logged in into the Metasploitable over SSH. If I run whoami, You can see I'm MSFadmin. I have config. You will see that this command will give me the IP address of our Metasploitable machine. So this means I'm logged into the Metasploitable. ls will list files from the Metasploitable, and so on. Now you can exit it with just typing exit, and connection will be closed right now. But what we have to do right now is actually create a program that will automate this entire process for us, and then after we actually log in, it will try to send back the output of the cat@cshadow command, which will actually just send the root username and password, and other accounts as well, usernames and passwords. Just the passwords will be hashed, but we will actually try to crack them later on. For now on, we just want to get them. So let's see how we can do that. First of all, let me just go out of the scanning section. And let's make a directory called sshftp. No such file or directory. Oh, we cannot have the slash, so let's just call it sshftp, just like this. And here we have sshftp, where we will code some of our future attacks on the SSH protocol and FTP protocol. So let's go to the directory, which is this one. And right now, let us actually nano something like nano ssh login.py. We want to actually create a program that will be able to connect to the target over SSH and actually execute the command itself. So first of all, let us just, for now on, for this tutorial, as a beginning, just code the main function, and then later on we will code the connecting function and then sending the command function. So first of all, we need to start the user bin Python line in our code, and we need to import a library that we are first encountering for now, which is pexpect. It will allow us to automate some of the processes in our SSH logging in. So after we do that, let us create a main function, so def main, which will take no arguments as always. We will set the host, which will be the IP address of our Metasploitable, which is 192.168.1.5. We will set user to be equal to the MSFadmin, and we will set the password to be equal to MSFadmin. So for now on, we only want to actually be able to log into the SSH with our Python program. So we specify the user, we specify the admin. Right now, we will create something called child, which will be our SSH shell. We want to perform the connect function on that, which is the function that doesn't really exist, so we will have to code this function in the next video. And we want to paste to that file the host, the user, and the password. So first of all, let's paste the user, then the host, and then the password. So this function connect, which we will code in the next lecture, will take these three inputs, which we will perform the connection with. So after that, once we perform the connection, we want to make a function called send_command, which will actually send the command to this SSH shell, and then the command will actually be cat@cshadow. So this function right here, which we'll also need to code, will take an input of the SSH shell, which we stored in the variable child, and it will also take an input of the command. So we can specify that command to be cat@cshadow, and for example, let's say we only want the root password, so we will grab root and then ps, or pardon me, ps, or we can actually type ps. What this will do is, I didn't really show you this yet, but if you open a terminal, you can actually run two commands at the same time. So for example, this command is a one command. This command will basically list the @cshadow file, and then it will only try to find for the lines that contain root in them. And then if you separate the commands with the dot and then comma, you can run a different command, which in this case we will try to run ps for no reason at all, just to show you how it works, which is showing the processes running on the target system. So let me show you. If I just save this for a second, if I just go cat@cshadow, you can see here here is that file that we need that contains the password, hash value and password for root, as we can see right here. So we will be just going for this line on our target system. And if you just type here the cat@c/shadow and then grep for root, you can see we only get the line that contains the root. But if you just type cat@c/shadow and then grep root, and then dot and comma, and then ps, we can see that we grab the line that contains the password root, and we also list the running processes on our Kali Linux machine. So you can concat as many commands as you want. So if I just type here ls as well, you can see it does both of these commands, and then the third command, it just lists the file in the current directory, which at the moment is just shshlogin.py. So let us nano this file right here. We basically finish the main function. The real coding of this program is actually to code this connect function and this send command function, but it really isn't that hard. Let me just close the brackets right here so we don't get the syntax error. And down here we only want to actually call the main function. Now let's save this. And that would be about it for this tutorial. And in the next one we will code these two functions that we are missing. So hope you enjoyed this introductory part for SSH attacks, and I hope I see you in the next lecture where we will continue coding our SSH login program. Hope I see you there, and take care.